As people are jumping in. It's quiet. Good morning, Natalie. Somebody tell something significant that happened in your week this week. Nothing significant in anybody's week this week. All right, cool. People are still jumping in.
Your camera's still on.
Natalie, can you say that out loud? I don't read stuff from the chat into the main room.
So this is like my first full-time job, and I got my first raise after my performance review.
Woo! So Natalie's taking us all out to lunch today. Remind me, Natalie, you live in Texas, is that right? Do you live in Houston?
I was in Texas my whole life, but right now I'm in Utah. Thank you.
Utah, okay. Utah. Cool, people are still joining in. I'm actually going to start us off with communion today. I thought we might just start there and see where we go from there. And congratulations to Natalie are coming on into the chat. Remember, you can, if you're in the Zoom room, you can type things into the chat. We don't share those live over the feed. And so if there's anything you want to share as a prayer request or just something that you would like people to carry with you from this group, you can type that into chat and we won't put that out over any of the feeds. And that's private for you and the group in the Zoom chat. And I've been studying this week. I probably am going to do a Bible talk next week on the term paraclete, Paracletus, or it's a term that often we translate in the English translations of the Bible as Holy Spirit or advocate. We use it as the name for the Holy Spirit, but it's a term that means advocate or means somebody who comes and walks alongside. Jesus said that he was an advocate. He said another advocate was coming. Our Muslim friends believe that next advocate was Muhammad. And there's some argument over those translations, of course, but I've just been sort of playing with the idea of Paracletus. If the Spirit of God lives in me and the Spirit then is able to share with one another, that can we be a paraclete for one another? Okay, sorry, I'm trying to do technical stuff while talking and I'm doing it poorly.
Sorry, I'm throwing Paul under the bus and giving him tech problems today.
And so I just think, and so I'm saying this to say, if you feel comfortable to share things you would like people to carry with you, to pray for, if that's your tradition, or just to encourage you, you can put that in the chat box. And I believe we are to be paracletes for one another, a spirit that comes alongside and carries things together. So you're free in the chat box to type those things in, and we won't share those out to the general public world that may tune in on YouTube or somewhere else. I just love that idea. I love that idea of the Spirit of God in me being able to walk with your spirit, and we walk alongside together, carrying things together. All right, anybody else have anything they want to share from their week other than Natalie's big news of her pay raise?
All right,
Yeah.
I'll just jump in.
Lauren and
I'll
Charity, I
follow
see your hand up. Yeah.
So I actually had this really cool conversation yesterday. So I mean, all of us are deconstructing, reconstructing, whatever we're doing, right? And I talked to a friend of ours who's in Sicily with us and speaks English, and is a missionary previously to Cyprus. Um, and he had seen some of the stuff I had posted online and had kind of gone, "Oh my gosh, you're going off the deep end spiritually," and but kind of said, I'm not going to have the debate online, which I respected him a ton for, and let's meet in person. And so I ended up talking to him for probably about 3 hours or so yesterday, and talking about different parts of theology and this and that. And we kind of got towards the end, and I went, the cool thing about this group that I'm part of is that we gather every week and we center around communion and around remembering Christ. And in so many ways, I feel like on different weeks, we're each kind of probably in a slightly different space of exactly what does that mean? Or, if you were told you have to give a theological treatise for the meaning of this today, I know at least for me, probably every week it might be slightly different. And yet that's the centrality of what we're doing. And I've shared this now with him, with a couple other people, and the response continues to be, if that's what you're centering on is Christ and communion, this is going to work. It's all good. It's all okay. And I've found that personally to be really comforting, gratifying. Not sure what the right word is, but it's nice to hear from the people that would normally be saying, no, you guys are all crazy. That when we kind of go, okay, what's the core? It's like, yeah, okay, I'm not quite sure where you're going, but this is still good. This is safe. So anyway, I share that as an encouragement. I was telling Paul that yesterday, and I hope that's encouraging to others too.
Awesome, Lauren. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that's really how this came to be and particularly during COVID, a lot of us were in this space of like, well, what do we do now? We're deconstructing. We can't go to church. What do we do? And I run into it quite a bit with people who are like, hey, I can't go to that church anymore because the fruit of it is not good. It doesn't feel good to be a part of that community anymore. But I still have a spirituality in me that wants to be expressed and wants to be expressed in community, not just alone in my own time. And I just think there's something very powerful about us corporately joining together to say, hey, even if we don't fully agree, I affirm who you are. And if you affirm me and our spirits connect, there's just something more powerful and synergistic of us together than individually. So let's do that. Let's take communion together just as we start today. And I hope that's okay. I feel like maybe we may hear and find something significant. And if I can say what Lauren is typing into the chat, I do love to see your faces. And I get it. If you're just rolling out of bed and your hair's a mess and you don't want to be seen on camera, it's totally okay. But as much as we're able to see each other, it does, I think, encourage us to know we are actually connected to human beings on the other sides of those names. So thank you guys for doing that, but don't ever feel like you have to. We're not performing for each other here at all. So thank you guys for turning on your cameras right now. So I have a Ritz cracker today and some cranberry juice. Those are my communion implements today. And so whatever you have, and if anybody doesn't have their implements with them, run to your kitchen and grab whatever you got. A piece of bread, a tortilla, a Dorito, a beer, a water, wine, coffee, whatever it is. Because the most important implements of communion together are each other and a heart. Brenda says she got her hair in order. That's good. All right. So the most important implements here are for one another So Bob is saying he can't hear. Can other people hear me? I think you turned on your camera, so you must be able to hear. Okay, Bob's having some trouble with his. So if you have your implements, grab them. And I want this to be a time of a little bit of a time of mindfulness and connecting to heaven together. And let's just see what we might hear from a connection to the divine and supernatural. And for some of you, this may be something that you may even be saying, I'm not even sure if I believe in that stuff of hearing God anymore that we learned, or if I even believe there is a God. But part of what I believe is we do have some understanding that there is something greater than us out there. And I believe we can connect to it and receive wisdom and encouragement and love from that, and particularly when we do that connectively. So just let me encourage you to take this moment to be silent and imagine yourself connecting with the divine or God or whatever that spirit of heaven looks like. You can close your eyes and picture yourself in a safe space in your imagination. It may be a real place that you've known that connected you to something of the divine in the past, or it can be a place that's just totally made up in your inner world where you're able to go and connect with heaven. And just sense what it feels like to be in that space and to be safe and calm. If any anxious thoughts come saying, oh, I've got to worry about this later today or this later this week, just take that thought, set it aside, say, I'll come back to you. I have more time to be anxious later today. Right now, I'm going to let that thought go and just be here in this place of wellness and shalom. Just let that relaxation with deep breaths just impact your body, that even your physiology relaxes and sitting with the presence of heaven with you. And if you're not able to have a sense of heaven being with you, of a spirit of heaven being with you, that's okay. Just sit in solitude. But if you can, just sense, what would it feel like? What does it feel like to be in the presence of something divine, of something greater than this natural life that we know? What do you see, feel, hear, taste, smell? What emotions well up? Feel those emotions. They're telling you what's happening inside. Just take note of it all. So some of us may even want to ask that divine spirit, like, why am I feeling this way? What do I need to know and hear today? What would you say to me, God, if we can use that terminology? Or what can I hear from the wisdom and spirit of heaven today that will encourage me, or be something I can share with this group to encourage the group? And just take a moment to listen. Hi, Kristen. We're just sitting in a safe space in our spirit right now and just listening to heaven, interacting with the divine together, seeing if heaven has anything to say to us to share with one another or to impact our hearts today. Hmm. Yeah. So just look at the screen now and just know that our spirits are connected in this moment with that spirit of the divine as we go to take our communion together today. And let's do that with just a heart of gratitude. Gratitude for each other, for the moments of solitude that we're able to share, for time of sitting with that divine spirit of heaven, for the story of Jesus that says you don't need an intermediary to connect to heaven anymore, but are free to access heaven, God as Father, heaven as wisdom, heaven as love, heaven as peace and welfare and shalom anytime you want. So we are grateful today as a corporate group for all the love and peace and hope and wisdom brought in the story of Jesus. And we remember the story of the sacrifice of the body to be broken to display what true love of sacrifice for another looks like. And we say, Spirit of Heaven, teach us how to live that out in our own life so that we can truly look like Christ and be a Christian in our lives. We bless this bread as a symbol of that, of the inspiration to be like Jesus in our life. Amen. Let's take it together. And we drink our wine together as a sign of life, that the story of Jesus is not to bring condemnation, but life abundant, life to the full, life of wholeness. And I just speak over us and each of us as individuals that we are worthy to have an abundant life, to have shalom, to live free from shame. That is the story that Jesus came to tell. That you are free from that bondage. So we are grateful today, Spirit of Heaven, for the freedom and life that the story brings. And we accept that call to truly know ourselves as children of heaven, of children of God, rather than anything less than what you tell us we are. We bless that today. Amen. I always do cranberry juice because I just love the tartness of it when I take that drink, that it just is jarring a little bit in its tartness to say, ooh, you got to pay attention to this. And I think communion is the same. It's like, hey, focus. This is a really amazing moment, a really sacred moment. So I would love it if anybody feels comfortable to share. What did you hear, feel, sense, experience in that time of sitting? And maybe you feel a little reticent or hesitant or shy to share, but I promise you, we will celebrate whatever you heard in your spirit, whatever you would share. And so I would love it if some would share. What did you hear in that quiet time today? And you can just turn your mic on and start sharing. Yeah, just start talking. I see some, if you're
Oh,
waving,
okay.
go ahead and jump in.
I think I was just able to acknowledge that I've been feeling very lonely, and I don't have to have a solution to that just this like exact moment, but to just like, yeah, that's how you're feeling. That's what's happening.
Mm.
A little clarity. That's good.
Yeah, is there anything we can do to walk alongside you in that today, Carol?
I'd really like to get like a dog, but yeah, I don't, James is there for me. He's there for me. But it's really good to be connected with all of you here. So thank you for being here. It's really good for me.
Yeah, Carol, I appreciate you sharing that. I really believe vulnerability creates safety for others to be vulnerable and feel what they're feeling. And so thank you for sharing that. That's really brave of you and empowering to the rest of us. Who else would share?
Part of why I was rushing to get ready this morning was that I've ended up in a conversation on Facebook in the last 24 hours with somebody who is just kind of yelling the evangelical line. And it's given me pause this morning, and I was pondering it some while we were in our meditation time of God of, teach me how to express humility while also being able to have an honest conversation. It's how do I ask others to reconsider what they're thinking with an attitude of openness that says, it's not me yelling my doctrine back, if you will. It's me still exploring. Here's the conclusions I've come to. Here's my reasons I question some of this. So, I doubt that conversation is going to go any further, but particular one. But it's an interesting process here of how do you change your mind without becoming equally dogmatic, I guess. I think it's through God's grace, and I just am grateful that there's places where we can talk together and not necessarily agree 100%, and raise the right questions and explore together, but not just for us, but so that we can interact more authentically in our other interactions with people who would disagree with us. As I heard Lauren sharing while I was scrambling to finish putting myself well enough together to turn the camera on.
Awesome.
So,
Does anybody have any thoughts or encouragement for Brenda or along those lines?
I'm thinking that maybe we just need to change our expectations of what our goals are. That for me, I think for many times I've wanted to convince people of certain things, or open people's eyes, or whatever. And maybe we're just at a place right now where we just have to love people and not just accept people where they are, even though it might be crazy making, just love them and, leave the conviction process or the explanation or the process of changing minds up to God, just loving people.
It's good, James. Thank you. Anybody else here experience anything during our quiet time you want to share?
So I've mentioned a few times that I've been starting doing counseling, which has been good. And one of the things the counselor brought forward, which as we were praying, I kind of went, okay, maybe this is something to share with the group, was he was asking me where are the places you find contentment. And it hit me this morning when I was waking up that I didn't feel like I had permission to be content. And I want to be very careful in the way I'm messaging this to kind of bookend with what Carol was saying of there are absolutely people right now that are in a spot of not feeling good. And I want to give you permission to feel that. And at the same time, I feel like a lot for me in the last couple of years, 5 years now, right? Since Trump started, 6 years, I don't know how long this has been, however long it's been. It's felt like if I kind of allow myself to start to feel content, I'm betraying or being okay with this thing that clearly isn't okay. And it kind of hit me this morning of like, no, it's also okay to be in a spot of joy, of contentment. And not that even means that we're saying, oh no, this thing that's hard or lonely or scary or sad or whatever isn't true. Not saying we shouldn't feel it, but also just as we should feel that, it's equally true and real and appropriate to feel the positive that we're encountering.
That's good. Love that. Yeah, there's no question for me. I've realized in this last season how traumatic it was to grow up in an evangelical church and constantly be told I should not be okay with myself. Every message was to think of myself as less than. Kind of the idea of God loves you, but he sort of has to because he's God. But he doesn't really approve of you. You're just lucky. And how much damage that had in my life. And then always reading the story of Jesus, and it's like, wow, Jesus seemed to be a lot nicer to sinners than my church is. There's no question Jesus was pretty rough on religious people. But sinners he spoke very kindly to. Anybody else want to share anything from their quiet time? I just love hearing it. I love us sharing together and encouraging one another and sharing what's going on in our hearts, or as it says in Jeremiah, I think 7, I, the Lord, test your kidneys. We translate that in English as heart, but it's actually the testing of the kidneys. It's the testing of your emotions to reveal what's happening inside. And my favorite passage on all of this in the Bible actually comes from Brené Brown, who says, guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am bad. When we understand that we are inherently good as creatures of this universe, then we can own up when we screw up in relationship. We don't have to be defensive of ourselves. We can say, yeah, that was not good when I bumped up against you. That was not good when I misused your emotions for myself. But if making a mistake reminds me that I'm dirt and terrible and not worthy of God's love, then I have to start trying to cover some of that stuff up. And so I think it's very freeing to begin to declare ourselves as good, that occasionally, because we're human, don't do all things good. Yeah, Brenda.
Okay. I find myself making that distinction with the phrase state of being versus, current actions. My state of being before God is one of a beloved child, just as my children's state of being in front of me is that of people that I love dearly. But darn well, as parents, all of us who've been parents or had interactions with young people know that is not how they behave all the time. But we love dearly, and I'm always prepared to have them come back from where they make mistakes. So my state of being is because of who God said I am, and He said in the beginning, it is good.
Yeah, I love that. And in my coaching that I do, I tell the story that was told to me once of if you're ever in Southern California and the person who's bringing you your food or taking your order is never, ever a waiter or a waitress. Your table is never waited on in Southern California by a waiter or a waitress. Your table is waited on by an actor or an actress. And if you were to ask that person who's bringing you your food at a Southern California restaurant, what do you do for a living? They would say, I'm an actor. My experience today is I'm waiting tables, but that's not who I am. I am not a waiter or a waitress. That's just my experience at the moment. The truth of myself is I'm an actor or an actress. And I just love that analogy, to be able to say, my experience today is that I didn't live up to my best self. Absolutely true. I can live that. But the truth of me is that I'm this amazing creature, a big effing deal, as I like to tell my clients. And when I believe that I'm a big effing deal, I'm going to strive to live up to that. When I'm told I'm dirt and worthless and lucky, then I'm going to live down to that. And I'm going to strive to try to be okay in that space. So I'm calling us to believe that even if in the evangelical story, God put on skin to become one of us to explain this message to us, we must be something pretty significant. D'Amicos, did you guys have your hands up?
Yeah, and just in part to highlight what Brenda was saying, but yeah, when God creates people, He says we're very good. And I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, that He never in the garden or at the end of the garden or anywhere in that story curses humanity. I was always taught that He did. I was always taught that, at the end of the fall, we are somehow cursed as people, or that we're somehow no longer image bearers. And God put His image on us, and we were not cursed in the fall, which was an incredible realization when I noticed it a few weeks ago. And the other thing from this conversation last night, we were talking about Romans, and where Paul's talking about, the war within himself between wanting to do good and wanting to do evil and these things. And in having this conversation and reading through this again, it was clear this is not Paul saying like, I am evil. He was saying there's this thing that's kind of there, that's driving me crazy, that wants to do wrong, and yet I also want to do right. And I think so often we latch onto the I want to do wrong part and go, well, that must be our essence. And I feel like Paul's saying like no, the reality is I want to do right. God, I'm made in the image of God, and yet there's this thing kind of like a mosquito that keeps biting at me, trying to get me to do the thing I don't want to do.
Good. Awesome. Yep, you are amazing, Lauren, and everybody else on my screen, right? I love that. I'll just share it. Like, I kind of had this image in my brain of a wheat field and and I don't even know where, I don't think I've ever actually seen a wheat field like this, but just a really full wheat field, and the wind blowing, and the grain like weaving in the wind, and just was struck by how beautiful a picture that is. For one, just that there was something of life interacting with heaven. Jesus talked about the Spirit and said, hey, the wind blows where it's going to blow, and that the job of us is to go where the wind is going, not to try to say, I'm going to stop the wind and make it go somewhere else. And even in that swaying and bending process of the grain, and I know very little about ag, but it does cause a tension that releases seed, that releases other things that the weed is there to give, to perpetuate life. And I just saw it as kind of an allegory, metaphor. I'm never sure which of those words is which, of just us as a community of trying to sense where the breeze of the Spirit of heaven is blowing and going, and bending to that as a way to recreate life with one another, to perpetuate life with one another. And how beautiful a picture that is. And the passage says how beautiful it is when we live in unity together. And so I just loved that as a picture of me thinking about what we're doing together. Sharing times where, hey, my life isn't its best today. But I understand that being aware that my life isn't its best today is a part of being alive, and being alive together. So it's beautiful. All right, I think we're going to go to our community time together here soon, and just give us some time to share. You may want to share what you experienced in your quiet time. You may want to share what's going on in your life, or we just take some time at the end in the Zoom room to go into breakout rooms, be in community with one another, share life, and just be together. And so today I wanted to give us a little extra time in that, or at very least, if you do the same amount of time, you'll have a little more time on the back end. And so just be paracletes for one another, come alongside one another, share your spirit with each other, and live life together. So bless you guys as Lauren and Charity take us out today.
We're getting everybody set up. Have a
Sorry,
great week. if we
I
don't
jumped the
see
gun on you guys a little bit today. Sorry about that.
That's
All
okay.
good. All good. All right, here we go. See y'all next Sunday.